excusas para juntarnos. ¿Será un legado? ¿Que tengo un buen día? Picoteo en casa. ¿Que tienes un mal día? Nos vemos en la tuya y a resolver el mundo. Al mínimo rayo de sol, buscamos al de la barbacoa. Y el típico llevo a un amigo, capaz de movilizar a todo tu grupo. No es un secreto. Un legado sabe mejor cuando lo compartes.
Let's have a big round of applause to Gianluca Fiorelli. It's a pleasure to be back here to speak along with these other wonderful speakers. Last year I was talking about my mom, and this year I'm talking about Strikes Back. We are in different stages. If something new comes, we might be a bit surprised, and then we are more surprised, and then we get the generative search, and we get shocked because we're worried it will take our jobs away from us. But in reality, it's not the case. If we think about it in strategic levels, and we are not reactive, we will realize that we can actually deal with the situation. We can minimize the strategies that we have, and we can attract traffic and convert new entries to traffic. Sometimes we can see how in the past the search journey used to be very straight, but now it has become a lot more complicated. At the end of the year, when the general search came, it became more or less like a labyrinth. In Italian, we talk about gattopartism, which is a word that comes from Italian literature. What it means is changing everything in order not to change anything. What does it mean in Google? It means that generative search is about retaining users within Google to make sure that they can reach the final destination, which can be the result of a website. Having said that, in this case we have an advantage here, because these models can be used by us as well. So we need to take into account the specific situation, and we also need to think about the context, because otherwise we can become reactive, and that doesn't give us very fruitful results. What I'm trying to say is not that near future is going to be easy. But what I'm trying to say is that everything that we're living now has already happened before, and all of this will happen again in the future. Nothing is going to change. Of course, the context is going to change, and we need to learn to adapt to the situation, to the context. This great new AI has seen a lot of new unbelievable things being introduced to our world. For instance, we also have the different ways that people can have in their search journey in Google, and it has been very strong, very functional, because when you're looking on Google, it is working on real products. We no longer have just general information. and the information has been changed one to the other. And in shopping graphs, we have the feature in the Google Merchant Center, which is the tool for monetization in Google. And it is not only about generative search on Google, but rather the ugly duckling of the manufacturer center has become much more important. If we are a brand that produces a product that other shoppers, other merchants also sell, then it has become more useful for these manufacturers to sell and to attract other sellers to us. But what we see is that the description that we have for manufacturer is considered canonical by Google. That means other merchants do things on their feed, which is in canon with what we are doing as manufacturer. People like Lily have told us about EAT, and all of this is becoming much more common. When we do a competitive analysis, what we should start to analyze is the question which searches are given as expert searches by Google. So here we need to be preventive, and we can't do this work at the moment when we're launching a product, but we have to do it earlier, even before the product comes out. And it's important to take this into account, because the information that is given in Google is conditioned by QDF. In some cases, Google can be used for comments which are present in the cited source, and therefore it's very important also to keep in mind the taxonomy, which depends on the ontology that we've defined for the product. The most important thing that Google has introduced in search is questions related to products. And we have the same tools of sharing information that the people can use when they ask questions. And if we take all of our data and our competitors' data from Python, and we cluster it with k-means, we use OpenAI, we have all these related entities. We can see then with ChatGPT that we can take clusters of products and clusters of questions to understand what the archetypical questions are, and we can understand which of the questions from the reviews we can use. So at web level, we can create new useful data, and we will also understand what kind of questions will be asked by Google in order to navigate its search. There is also a lot of talk about YouTube when it comes to content, but there is not a lot of talk about the importance behind the marketing of YouTube. It is important to bear in mind that SERPs can also be used to present shorts. And if we have a competitive analysis of outreach, competitors' data can also be targeted. So it's good to analyze what competitors are saying and use this as source of information at expert level. On YouTube, you are presented with videos that you may be interested in, and this is all based on what you have clicked on before and your general interests, what you have Googled before. As SEOs, we are starting to really understand how this works, and we must remember that 45% of users are watching YouTube on TV, and this is US data. So for marketing, YouTube has to take into account also the factors of visualization on TV screens. But the real battlefield is going to be generative search. 90% of search results that Google gives us is a pile of rubbish, but we need to still analyze it. So what do we have here? We have the response generated by Google. We have the sources used to create this response. And if it's something that can be related to products, again, we can see again the organic shopping graph. And it's very important to keep this in mind, the shopping graph. The most beautiful thing I want to tell you about is the related conversations. They have nothing to do actually with what people might actually ask, but they are related, so to say. So we need to understand what source Google is using, and if the query is a question, then in organic results, Google also provides the response. So the possible responses can be used up here as well. This is why creating a good product portfolio is very important, and product sheets are crucial. Let's move forward to generative AI and semantics. Every dad thinks that child is beautiful, but actually the child might look like something like that. We also have these images here. A lot of websites have this unstructured build-up, not a structured one. In web, it's very important to bear in mind taxonomy. Taxonomy is a method of organizing data, and this is crucial for generative searches, because to look for structured and non-structured information, to then enter structures, add structures to unstructured data, is very important to be able to provide responses. Here's a good example from a data bank from Star Wars, and another example here where we can have locations from Star Wars. Another good example, IMDb here. Topics. Probably the ugliest example here is the Tolkien Gateway, which, however, still has quite good classification by categories. These are examples where the taxonomy is taken into account, and it means that these websites cannot be used by Google like some others can. But are the search journeys consistent with the potential that Google has? If we take the contextual search menu filters, here we can see images, list size, gallery, quality filters, and the Google queries that we need to take all of these filters in mind when we create our content. This is the search tags view, and on topically.io we can have this quicker research. People also ask, is also a good way of looking for the main clusters and classifying them. When questions are repeated in different clusters, then they are reclassified. Now, SG related questions, this is about generative search, related questions that bring us other questions that have been asked and answers that we can analyze with any instrument of analysis. But if we take the word lift add-on for Sheet, we also have the keyword search here on the first page. This allows us to make an architecture that is well structured. But an architecture is also not something that can be architectured and designed perfectly and then forgotten about. It has to be dynamic, and it has to take into account all the changes that are happening on the website. I'm sure that in key trends, the owners of key trends would also agree. Ontology is one of the most important things as well, because ontology is the representation, a formal representation of knowledge about a domain, which includes the concepts within this domain and the relations between these concepts. So if we take these locations again, or we look at the related images here from starwars.com, all of this is related between each other. This is a graph here that again shows the interconnections, and if we take this kind of answer, that's something that a generative search could give us. So that would be very efficient. Another thing to think about is the scheme. Schema is made up of lots of different elements. So how to link different elements that can be separated and actually bring them together coherently? Well, this is a markup for cars, but this one would be for banks and financial institutions. So they can be very, very different. And this kind of schemes have been present for the past 12 years. Even more important is the same as. It's the ontology inside of the website, and something that is also linked to different websites that are not necessarily directly related to ours. Entity salience and context. Well, these entity salience is also something that's completely new, but very valuable. We have this Google definition here on the left, and it's on the right we have a definition that's not exact. It's about Moff Gideon, a Star Wars character, but as we can see in the same text, we have two different entities describing the same person from the series. So this could refer to completely different things. We don't know if we're talking about the actor or if we're talking about the miniature. Images for the lens are very good in order to create links within the web, and amazing for visual search. A related product could be a suitcase. So we need to analyze to understand what things could be related to that first product. This would help us to create more conversions. Well, this attribute is also possible multi-search. Yes, I can use multifusion and use this product with the characteristics that we choose. AI images can be quite practical if, for instance, we don't have a specific photo that we need. We can use AI to edit the photo that we have. And the quality can also be increased very quickly using AI. But making image prompts is not about saying that please paint this for me